All right, let's get right into it. So the podcast is called Big Jump, and you found success as an entrepreneur with Color Jar, but what inspired you to get involved with a project like this?
Well, The Big Jump is a podcast about human reinvention, and it's on a mission to inspire people's next big jump. Making a big jump is part of my story. I was a professional basketball player and made my transition, as you said, to founding Color Jar, a top-rated branding firm here in Chicago. So that experience was one of the most challenging and rewarding kind of moments and periods of my life. So I want to feature other professional athletes who have created success beyond sports.
Well, let's talk about some of those people that you've featured. Could you give me a list of some of those notable names?
Yeah, season one has an incredible mix of guests, male and female professional athletes. Chris Humphries, who talks about his wide-ranging business pursuits and how he's made that transition from an NBA star into everything that he's doing beyond sports. Sure. Brooks Laich, NHL veteran, who's now in the midst of his transition and talks very openly about that. And we have also NBA star Mason Plumlee, who is a current NBA player. And so part of what surprises people is how much these athletes are doing while they're currently seeing a lot of success with their sport.
Yeah, I think, as a former athlete, that's obviously incredibly appealing to me. And I was also really surprised to see some of the savvy moves that they've made. But I don't want to steer those who aren't athletes away from this, because the beauty of it is it's not so much about sports, correct?
That's exactly right. At its core, it is a podcast about human reinvention, and anyone can get lessons from these amazing athletes. We're inspired by them while they're on the field or on the court. And what I'm finding from the feedback I'm getting from listeners is that they're also inspiring people in how they're handling their transitions.
What was one of the most interesting things that, as you're going through this, that you heard from some of these guys? Because you were an athlete, so it's not foreign to you talking to athletes who are doing other things, because you were always that type of athlete yourself. And I've known you for a lot of years, and I knew that there's always more to you than just basketball. So what was something you were surprised in some of these subjects to hear from them, like, whoa, I had no idea?
Well, I think the thing that I'm learning is that people have an easier time with a transition when they do parallel path. And I think that's a great lesson for listeners out there. Well, rather than having your entire identity situated in one area of your life, is to have multiple pursuits at the same time. Because if one of those things should come to an end, then you have the other thing to kind of keep you afloat and to pour your heart and passion into. And so that's a consistent theme that I'm seeing, is people who are able to do that seem to have an easier time making the transition. Change happens to all of us, right? Life's unpredictable. People hate change. Yeah. The job when change comes is to think about, well, how am I going to reinvent myself to meet the change?
Yeah. And you can do it at any time in your life. Reinvention, I think, is something, as I've learned. Look, I'm still very young by society's standards, being in my mid-30s, but I've already reinvented myself once, and I imagine there's going to be reinvention as it comes along. So you're never too young or too old for reinvention, correct?
That's exactly right. And you know this from being an elite athlete yourself.
Elite, I'll take that. I get no respect around here.
But it is, reinvention is a common theme. Mm-hmm. Anyone can relate to this. I think that athletes make for particularly vivid examples, right? Retirement comes to them from their first act in life at a very young age. Sure. They have identities that are reinforced very publicly and celebrated from the world around them. And it was something that they started usually as a kid. So that change, I think, is particularly tough. And that's why I've picked athletes as well, is because it's my own story and I think I can help tell it. But that's why athletes. It's not necessarily a sports podcast. It's really a podcast that I want to help people inspire their next big jump and learn from some of these lessons.
Quickly, if you could name just a few things, 2-3 things, as you just listed one there, with 30 seconds left here, 3 things that people would gain from this podcast.
Well, I think one thing that people would gain is to appreciate their own past. So I think I've done that, and that's been one of the meaningful things from my experience of hosting this, is just learning from your past and appreciate it and thinking about how you can celebrate that. People grow, I think, more like trees, where you add rings as you move along, and the past is still there, and there are things to build off of. So it's not so much of shedding an old self, but just growing and evolving, and that's been the big lesson for me.
Great stuff, very impressive. David Gardner, thank you so much, my man. Reinventing himself here. Make sure you take a listen. Learn how to reinvent yourselves. The Big Jump Show can be heard on Apple Podcasts and Google Play. You can also head to thebigjumpshow.com for all episodes. And like I said, it's very intriguing listen, intriguing subjects, and intriguing host right here.